Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Septic Quest. How you doing, man?
uh, I'm doing really good, and I've missed talking to you, and I'm glad you said that. That was funny. I kind of forgot about that already, even though I told you about that.
I mean, fucking autocorrect, right? Uh, but to all our listeners out there, we are no longer going to cover Malazan's Book of the Fallen. We are going to literally talk about shit's
deep,
Book of Fallen.
deep dive into the septic tank.
Yes, we're gonna go over how they're made, how they're implemented into the ground, how they're cleaned and maintained. Like that is now our content.
It is, and I, so when I don't know if I was in high school yet, or if it was like seventh, eighth grade, something like that. But there was a day I came home from school, and at that point in time, we had a septic tank in our house. Where I lived, we weren't hooked up to city sewer yet, and it was my parents had to get the septic tank cleaned or pumped or whatever you do with them. And I got off the bus, and it smelled like shit. And I mean, I couldn't even go on. I went to a friend's house. I said I'll come back later. It was terrible.
And that was probably that was your family's shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has that dawned on you? Like that smell was your family's shit.
And it does stink. So there's that.
Was
Uh
that up on Skyline?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
Man, I
to
remember liking
just to give a little background on that little story, I had text Justin a few days ago and told him that I was trying to type out our podcast name, and it wanted to autocorrect epic to septic. So that's what that's about.
Yeah, so we're not actually, for those of you that are still listening, we are not gonna talk about septic tanks.
We
And
might
I
maybe
really
talk about shit though.
yeah, we'll definitely talk some shit. But we're not gonna have anybody come out and rooter it out.
I hope not.
Man, do you remember my buddy Mike Tigelaar?
Yep.
There was a moment where I think he was spending the night at my place, and we both the night before took like massive shits in the upstairs bathroom, and then my mom went to go use that bathroom and couldn't flush it.
Oh no.
She had to call she had to call Roto-Rooter to come get the shit out or
Mm,
push it down with their like little toilet snakes or whatever they used.
I bet she was pleased.
Nah, she's pretty upset, but we laugh about it now.
That's all you can do.
Yeah. But yeah, again, we're definitely not going to be talking about septic tanks. So uh, hopefully I didn't deter any of our listeners with that opening statement there.
I, I would like to think that everybody's probably got a sense of humor, and I think sometimes a change of wording is good to make sure everybody's paying attention.
Yeah. I definitely think that they'll get that it's a joke right away because we've never talked about septic tanks, and no, will we ever?
Not a subject I am knowledgeable about.
No, knowledgeable about contributing to them, but that's about it.
Right?
But yeah, outside of that, how you been, man?
Ah, man, it's been May is a busy month with kids' birthdays, and dance kind of is in full swing. We had competition last weekend. We had competition like the first weekend of the month. We've got dance recital this weekend, and then we're kind of done here for a little bit. And Memorial Day weekend is going to be busy, and it just seems like things never slow down. How about you?
Uh, Adulthood. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy week. Both jobs are um, crazy, so to speak. I've had nothing but terrible luck with the vehicle in the last 10 days. So that's been a fiasco. It was the seniors' last day on campus today, and usually, like the night before, they come into the school and they like play a bunch of pranks and stuff. So we walked into the library, which is where my office is located, and literally all of the furniture was like stacked on top of each other.
Wow.
I also found so like throughout the walls of the school there are pieces of artwork that are kind of like embedded into the wall. They're not like pieces of paper. They're like actually on the wall, and there was a bunch of googly eyes all over them. I found a unwrapped condom over a sink in one of the bathrooms. Yeah, it was interesting, but give them like maybe a 3 or 4 on the creative scale.
So they are not done with school, but they do not have to come to campus.
You're right. Yeah, they do what is called senior seminar, and they get to go off campus for 2 weeks and like study something that they're interested in and like do a project on it. I'm not quite sure of the complete details because I'm just the computer nerd there. I don't do anything with classes or schedules or anything like that.
Huh. Interesting. Sounds like a good way to fuck off for 2 weeks
Yep.
for the
I don't
seniors.
even
I mean,
remember. Yeah, I don't even remember being a senior in high school. I feel like I didn't take high school very seriously.
yeah, there's things I remember about it, but maybe a conversation for another day.
Yeah, but yeah, just it's been just a real busy week. So I'm been looking forward to this for a while. I know that it's been a good 2 weeks since the last episode, but I mean it was it was 2.5 hours long. So hopefully that gave everybody enough time to kind of digest and listen to that. Whether that was all in one shot or took you a couple of days to listen to it on your ways to work, but
Yeah, it has felt like a long time. I've been anxious and to do this again. I've been looking forward to it. Anxious in a good way. Um, I enjoy doing it and I have fun talking to you. And yeah, it was weird. We both had stuff going on. It just didn't work out to do it last week, but definitely missed it.
absolutely. And we'll continue adding things to the septic tank.
Yes.
Shit, that is. We'll keep adding shit.
More and more shit.
Righto. So, um, yeah, we'll delve shortly into chapter 10 um, of Gardens of the Moon, the first book in the Malazan series. I don't know why I blanked on that for a second. Zoned out there. My bad. But yeah, we'll get started with chapter 10 here, and I guess you want to take her away.
Yeah, I can do that. We are right. I mean, I think by the end of this chapter, we will be just over halfway through the book. So about halfway there.
It's crazy, dude. I feel like I just started this book,
Yeah,
but
it doesn't feel like we've been talking for, I guess, just about 3 months here. Um, and I know I always feel impatient reading the book one chapter at a time and then waiting to talk to you. But that's what we're doing.
yeah, it's I definitely feel you there on the sense of impatience because sometimes these chapters leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So it's just like, what the fuck happened? Can we record already so like I can move on? But you know, I think it just goes back to our goal, and that is to just real time kind of synopsis and thoughts, theories, prediction all of that wonderful stuff because we again have no idea. We have no idea what's to come when we are recording these chapters.
Right. Well, we ready to get started here?
Let's do it. To it.
All right. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear it in the background. We've got my parents' dog here, and she's lapping up water like a freaking camel. So if you hear some noise, that's what it is.
Good background noise.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Maybe our listeners will think it's not a dog, but something else happening.
I don't know where your mind is at.
I'll tell you later.
All right. Well, I will start. What's the word? The epitaph?
Epigraph.
Epigraph. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. All right. Epigraph for chapter 10. Caller said, I walked this land when the Tilan Imas were but children. I've commanded armies 100,000 strong. I've spread the fire of my wrath across entire continents and sat alone upon tall thrones. Do you grasp the meaning of this? Yes, said Caladan Brood. You never learn. Conversations of War, second in command, Calor, speaking with Warlord Caladan Brood, recorded by Outrider, her local 6th Army. First section here. We have Tak making his way to the Vimkaros Inn. He knew it was in the Opal Quarter of Pale from wandering around. He had no idea who was there that would want to talk to him. He walked in carefully and didn't notice anything unusual other than the locals still seeming shocked from the culling of the nobility. Tak had kept to himself the past few days, with Adjunct Norn gone and Sale seemingly also gone. Dujek and Taishran were basically running the show. Dujek was using Pale as a recruiting ground to stock the Fifth Army. Taishran was looking for Sale to no avail. He suspected the quietness between Taishran and Dujek would be short-lived. Tak enters the inn. He talks to an old man. He says he has a table reserved in his name under Render Khan. He takes him to the table, and the old man delivers a message that a quote, gentleman will soon join you who has been out of his depth, yet not aware of it. He is now. Pran came walking through in local garb, and Tak kind of got a boner. I don't remember writing that. Pran asked if the message prepared him, to which Tak replied barely, and that he didn't know what to make of him. Did the adjunct set this up? Pran says no, and that she thinks he's dead, and that he briefly was kind of actually dead. He asks Tak who he's talking to, a claw or a soldier of the Second Army. Tak says that's a tough question, but he is a part of the quote defunct Second. Bran tells Tak about the assassination attempt on his life, and that if not for Mallet and Sale, he'd truly be dead. Whiskey Jack instructed to keep things quiet about him being alive. Pran asks Tak what the adjunct's plan is. He says, you ask a question of a claw? Tak says, you ask a question of a claw. Pran says, yes. Tak wants to know where Sale is. Pran relents and admits that she is on her way to Darujistan, and that she is aware of a Talan Imus with the adjunct, and that she thinks the adjunct's plan is to kill Whiskey Jack and the squad. Pran doesn't agree, though, because he's supposed to watch one member of the squad, and they're the only one who's supposed to die. Tak says, as far as he knows, it involves more than killing just Sorry. The Talan Imus is there for another reason, and the days of the bridge burners are numbered, and that Whiskey Jack's name is basically sacred among the bridge burners, and he couldn't convince the adjunct of this. And she thinks the opposite. If the bridge burners are eliminated, the armies will revolt and mutiny, not fall into line. Likely civil war will follow. Tak has convinced Paran that he must go to Darujistan, and that hopefully he can catch Tattersail and try to get in touch with Whiskey Jack before the adjunct does. The adjunct can no longer sense Paran, and Tattersail fears that this is why she wouldn't let him go with her. but his death severed the bond. Tattersall had him distracted. They were they were a little busy. That's why he was distracted, and he forgot about that. I did a terrible job there. Um, Basically, Tattersall uh, came to the conclusion that when uh, the assassination attempt happened on Paran, that whatever bond there was between the adjunct and Paran, where she could sense him and know where he was, or at least know a general area, um, that was left behind. Moving on. Paran says that he needs 3 horses and supplies because the adjunct is working on a timetable. Talk says he will need Wiccan horses and that he will get the horses and supplies and that they will get out of town unnoticed. They seal the deal with a drink. And that is the end of the first section.
Prost. Um, yeah, I thought it was an interesting way to start off the first chapter of the subbook, the mission, or no, assassins. Yeah, mission was the last subbook. Um, Kind of having Paran essentially reveal his face, and for him to just have complete and utter faith in Talk, kind of risky, wouldn't you say?
I think he must have, when they first met, he had, just a feeling of trust, I guess. But yeah, it does seem risky because, I mean, where is he loyal to? Is he loyal to Whiskey Jack and the Second Army, or is he loyal to the Claws and the Empress?
Right. Which I guess one of the things that I like Talk as a character, but I I can't put my finger on it, but he's working for Lorne and the Empress as a member of the Claw, but I have a feeling that, I mean, at this point, as everything is revealed or has been revealed through this book so far, is that he knows what they're doing is wrong, right? But I still get the feeling that he's playing both sides a little bit, but just very cautiously. Like that's kind of the impression that I'm getting of Talk so far.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of on the fence about him as a character. Like I feel like he could swing either way at any moment, you know?
I feel that way about a lot of the characters.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Yep. But I feel like so far in the story we've got a good idea as to where people and characters stand, but like you mentioned, they could very easily be swung the other way, like in the previous chapter, Dujek, right? I know that Lauren and Taysharon had a pretty in-depth conversation about making sure that even though he is affiliated with the Emperor and the Emperor's loyalty, that he is to be spared among quote unquote some others.
Right. Anything else that struck you about this chapter? Not chapter, this section?
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I have about this meeting is I know that Paran and Tattersall had spoken about some type of bond that Lorne may have placed on Ganoes, and I guess I know nothing was specifically mentioned about that particular link, so to speak, but from what I understand about Lorne is that she's like anti-magic, right? So how exactly would she create this link? Did she have someone else do it for him or for her? I guess it something there isn't adding up. And when I know that like he's been in her company, between like the Akito Khan massacre and current events, it's about what 3-ish years. So there's definitely time where this could have taken place, but I just keep going back to the fact that like she's so, anti magic. So
I think maybe it's kind of an extreme here, but it's like for a comparison, but it's maybe kind of like an atomic bomb. You don't really want to use it, but if it's to your advantage and you need to, you will. Maybe that's kind of the same thing with magic. She doesn't want to use it, but if it's gonna help get her to her end goal, which I kind of get the feeling she would do anything to get that end goal, she'll do whatever she has to do. So maybe she needed to, use some magic. Maybe, like you said, not herself. Maybe somebody else did it for her. But
right, yeah,
like I said, kind of an extreme comparison to make, but that's kind of how I thought of it.
yeah, that makes sense. I guess there's still a lot of mystery about Lauren as far as like this particular, up to this point goes. But just going off the very small pieces of information that I have about Lauren, it just something doesn't feel right about it. And how she's linking, or even just the fact that like Talk and Paran have a conversation and a discussion about Lauren's plan. Like Gano's is clearly under the impression that no, I was just there to like get to know and get close to Sorry. So, but we also know that Lauren, you know, in her conversation with Tayshren, like they're going after the bridge burners, specifically Whiskey Jack. So I guess if that's the plan the whole time, what what is it about Gano's specifically getting to know Sari that is advantageous to her taking out the bridge burners?
I guess I am not sure.
I feel like she's got multiple plans going on. Like clearly she knows something about Sari at this point, and we've talked a little bit about that in previous episodes. So is it possible that Sari just coincidentally is with Whiskey Jack and the bridge burners so she can accomplish two tasks at once? I'm probably way off, but that's just where my thought went when I read this section.
I think you have a lot of good points, but so we just, it's, I probably say it like every week. We just got to read on and find out, right? Not much else we can
Yeah,
do.
I mean,
I hate saying it all the time.
well, if you want, I can. Well, we'll just call that the hill you're gonna die on.
Read and find out.
Read and find out. But I mean, it makes so much sense. I mean, I like to theorize. I like to see if things come true or not. So,
Right.
which some things I've been right about, some things I've been really fucking wrong at. So,
Hey, but that's okay. I mean, we're just having fun.
right, exactly. But yeah, I mean, those were the really only real pieces of questions that I had, or comments or thoughts about this little section.
I think the only thing I would add, and I think it adds to your theory about talk, about which about him, flip flopping or playing both sides. But Pran asks him, who are you? Are you a claw or are you a part of the second? And he says, he's a part of the defunct second. Um, and then later on in the conversation, Pran asks him a question, and Talk says, "You ask a question of a claw." Um, Kind of a subtle thing, and maybe it doesn't mean anything, but why didn't he say, why did he say claw? It just kind of puts his loyalty in that gray area, where he could go either way. depending on what the situation calls for.
Right. Yeah, like you could pick and choose. Yeah, which is what makes me think that he's he's playing the game. He's playing a game, but he's doing it very cautiously.
For sure.
But we also know, well, I guess we don't definitively know, but like we talked about in the last podcast, Talk definitely has a loyalty to Dujek, who also has a loyalty to the bridge burners. So it's just kind of like there's all of these pieces that are like linked together. So I guess that's where I'm going is I think that he'll still do and carry out tasks for the Empress, but I don't know if that's really where his heart is.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But yeah, um I'm ready for this next section, which again, I need to stop writing so much, but I'm in love with detail. I like detail, and I like to be able to convey um well how it is that I see it in my mind when I'm doing these summaries. So again, please forgive me. Definitely not as long as some of the other ones, but it's a bit lengthy.
Don't apologize. Do your thing.
All right, well, here I go. Tattersail, traveling by her high tier warren. The warren is narrow, as some outside force that she cannot quite pin is attacking it. Realizing that she cannot continue, she emerges from her warren and steps out onto the Rivy plain. She curses herself and her carelessness as she has forgotten her deck of dragons. And if she hadn't, then the deck of dragons could have potentially helped her prepare for this kind of is Warren asphyxiation is how I interpreted what she's feeling. And as soon as she emerges from her warren, a huge silhouette is seen in front of her, and the silhouette turns out to be Bellerden. Bellerden says her name, and she has a moment of relief, but then fear as well. At Bellerden's feet is none other than that smelly sack of the decomposing body of Nightchill. Tattersail asks Bellerden how Tayshrin has denied her warren. Bellerden simply responds by saying that he doesn't think that it's within the High Mage's ability, but rather Tayshrin had anticipated that she would be traveling south towards Darujistan. And being that the Tier Warren cannot pass over water, and thus concluded that Tattersail's travels would eventually lead her here. Tattersail comes back to ask the question of her Warren. Bellerden explains that the Talani mass that is traveling with the adjunct is responsible for the influence on her Warren. He then continues to inform Tattersail that he is here on Tayshran's order to bring her back to Pale, and if she refuses, she must die where she stands. Tattersail, making conversation, makes the accusation of her friend's betrayal towards her. Bellerden, with a pained voice, explains that it cannot be betrayal if it's the High Mage Tayshran's order, and Tayshran is commander of both him and Tattersail. She denies that this is what she meant and recalls their conversation about being able to talk at length. I think that was like chapter 3. Realizing that Bellerden had indeed promised this, he asks if she wishes to speak now. She says yes and asks Bellerden if Tayshran had sent him to Genebaris to observe some scrolls for him. Bellerden questions this question and asks if this is necessary. Tattersail says that uh, this answer could be the reason she dies or accompanies him back to Pale. He tells her that he was sent to examine copied fragments of Gotho's Folly and ancient Jaghut Tome. Being that he's a Theloman, he possesses Jaghut blood, and he was able to seek out information about the burial of the Jaghut tyrant, a burial that was indeed a prison. Gripping on the verge of anxiety, Tattersail asks the Theloman where the tomb is located. Billerden explains that it lies directly east of Jerujistan, and at this point, Tattersail seems to figure out exactly what Lorne's plan is. That is to use her Otatero sword. And this is also the reason the Talani Mass is accompanying her. Billerden is in complete denial and tells Tattersail that it is more likely that they are headed there to prevent someone else from realizing the Jaghut tyrant. He ends the conversation and tells Tattersail that it's time to leave. Tattersails that she cannot go and to let her go. Billerden denies this. Being able to buy time with the conversation, Tattersail questions if there's a way out of the situation. Observing the burlap sack, she recognizes her compassionate gesture and from that sees her magic on the sack. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, magic sack. Thinking to herself if this is really the answer, she is brought back to the events of Hairlock's transformation into the asshole puppet. Embracing her high tier Warren, which she knew would be incinerated by the influence of the Talanimas's elder magic, Billerden staggers and then charges Tattersail. The fire blackened the world around her, and she embraced the charging Thelomen.
Damn.
Fucking epic, dude.
A lot. A lot kind of happens there, huh?
A lot does transpire, and I can only imagine what is going through Tattersail's mind. Um, one, she's confronted by what is, I guess I would consider them to be friends, right? But also in what Bellerden reveals of Tayshrun's order of him, she kind of puts the pieces together as to what Lauren is really up to.
She up to no good.
Up to no good. I thought what was like super cool, just at the very beginning of this chapter when she's inside of her warren and it's like super constricted and she has no idea what this force is. But the reoccurring theme that I'm getting from you know sorcerers and mages is that different warrens have like a smell. I don't know if you ever caught on to that, but it's described as like a sour brimstone and a mustiness that reminded her of unearthed tombs. And I thought this was a really clever way to allow us, the readers, to make our own assumptions. Um, but as Billerden, blatantly states, well, it's the Talana Mass. But if these are dead creatures, these are dead people, right? And brimstone, sour brimstone, and a mustiness, like I don't know. It just kind of it took me there with his use of the five senses. Like I can associate those smells to that of the Talana Mass.
I want to. They're interesting. Like I'm excited to find out more about them because we know they live like fucking thousands of years. So I I want to know more about them.
Yeah, and I mean, the very little that we know is, they are an elder race. So, and I know that gets brought up a couple of times in this section. Um, but we'll get to some of that later. But
Yeah,
another thing that the distraction, and I know that Ganoes and Tattersail both feel, I guess, distracted, even though they both got their rocks off. But yeah, one being but I saw that she's got two distractions here. One obvious, Paran and Bone Town, the horizontal mambo, that kind of thing. But it's mentioned the other distraction, and maybe this is really a distraction, but the other being this like overwhelming sense of urgency that she was feeling to be on her way. So, and I know that she has this thought like, okay, so is this Opon giving me the sense of urgency? Or is this just like, is this something that Opon's influence with Paran and being that they've interacted, right? Uh, is she somehow being influenced by, just even knowing who Ganoes is? So is this, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, is this a direct influence from Opon, or is this just like a residual something from Opon through Ganoes?
I guess to me, it feels like it would be maybe more residual, but that's just me.
Yeah, see that's what I'm leaning towards. But um I thought it was cool that the Jag Huts and the Thelomen, I'm assuming that there's some type of common ancestor is the wrong word, but some type of maybe like descendant of the Jag Hut elder race.
I don't feel like we've heard much about them either.
No. It's a pretty small tidbit in this little section, but they do, I didn't summarize it because I felt like it was a better talking point than it was a summary, but Billard and Tattersale also talk about the Jag Hut Tyrant, which is what Billerton was able to examine from these fragments of Gotho's Folly, which I know that there's been a couple of epigraphs with Gotho's Folly, right? I'm not crazy in seeing that, right?
No, you're right. Two, three, maybe. If yeah, I feel like it's
Yeah.
two, but yeah, there's been a couple.
I can only deduce that he's some type of scribe or um, note taker or journaler, of past events potentially. So some type of recorder, but in their description of this Jaghut tyrant, dude sounds like he's fucked up. Like Billerton explains that this tyrant's blood was poisoned by the ambition to enslave the lands. And when I read that, I was just like, dude, that's a lot because if that's like your only goal is just to enslave people, and it's revealed that he was able to accomplish that for 3,000 years, and begins to explain that the Talani mass of that time were unable to stop it, thus leaving the tyrant to eventually the Jaghut elder race to, they use the word sunder and imprison the tyrant. So, and sunder, from what I didn't quite know what that word was, so I looked it up, and apparently it has something to do with pieces. And so I deduced that, does this mean that there are pieces of him scattered around the world?
You'd have to like really hate somebody to chop them up and spread their parts around the world, or maybe fear them. That much to spread them to the
Yeah.
four corners of the world.
Well, I always associated, and I can't name any specific type of movie, but I feel like there are movies and even video games where you're in search of something, and you have to have, like, for example, two keys, but they're located in completely different parts of the world, you know. Like you're following a trail of some kind, and at the end of one trail is just more ominous, mysterious bullshit. about where to go next. I get like Uncharted vibes from that. Is kind of where I go.
Just kind of one thing leads you to another, to another, to another.
Right, right. Until I would assume that finally happens, or is thwarted in some type of way.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I had. I thought it was cool that we got a little bit of a backstory on the Jag Hut. And can we talk about this massive explosion? Like from what I in my mind when I read this, I'm like, did like a nuclear bomb go off? Like, and of course, like Tattersail, no, no, I like Tattersail.
You
I
like
need my
you.
soft pillow, man.
I was just gonna say you like her soft pillows. That's what you like.
Yes, yes. Give me some of them. But I couldn't grasp the thought that she was gone as a character. I couldn't grasp that. And I'm like, wanted to continue on reading because I like Tattersail and I have hopes that she's not dead. But I guess as you always say, we'll have to what?
Read and find out.
That's right.
But like I mean, when I read that, I guess I didn't get I didn't really know like what was happening, but I didn't get the, I guess, feeling that it was like a last stand or something like that. I mean, she had a plan. She knew what she was doing. I guess whether it works or not, I don't know. It's going to be like a calculated risk, I guess. But I didn't get the sense that she's like, well, fuck it, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that like, I agree with you. I definitely think that there was a plan, but I mean, what in this section would make you think that she didn't blow herself and Bullard into smithereens?
I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It was just, she drew her magic in, and the Bellarden. I don't. It reminds me so much of somebody or something, but I can't think of who it is. Another character from something, but I don't know how or who it is exactly. But I get like vibes, like okay, it's like I've kind of seen you before. Um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't get the sense that it was like a suicide mission. Like a I don't know how to explain it, but I just didn't think that this was going to be the end.
Yeah. I agree with you. And my initial reaction was like she's gone, but as I've read the chapter a few times, you know, I know that she in this moment of buying time, she one observes the burlap sack. Two, she recognizes the gesture of compassion, which, from what I recall, was a like a spell of preservation, so that she wouldn't like decay as fast. Is what I'm taking that as, so that Billerden would have time to bury her, and so she wouldn't fucking smell, right? Um, and also the third thing is she recalls Hairlock's transformation. So those were the three things that make me think that she's not dead, but we don't know. We don't know in this section. Like it literally ends. The section ends with them being engulfed in flame.
Yeah, it feels like something you would see like at the end of a chapter, not like a few paragraphs in.
Right. And I mean, and this will kind of bleed into the next section a little bit, but there is also, um, this event that happens between Billerden and Tattersail is, seen. It's observed. So I guess with that, we can go on to the next section if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. This one is it's a little shorter, I guess. Lauren approached Tool as they looked west. They didn't know what they were looking at, and Tool had never seen anything like it in all his years. It came from within the protective barrier he put around them. It should have been impossible, but there it was. Tool was silent. The pillar of fire raged into the sky for more than an hour. She asked Tool if he recognizes the Warrens. He says the Warrens and names several. One Lauren doesn't recognize. Tool says it's an Elder Warren. She thought there were only 3 Elder Warrens, and that wasn't a name she knew. Tool says that it's incorrect and that there are many, but all born of one. Starvald Demolane. Lauren wants to know who is capable of using such a power. Tool says once there was one who could, though of worshippers there are none. Tool does not have an answer. Suddenly the flame is gone. Tool says it is destroyed, but something has been born. Tool can feel its presence and is running away. Lorna was ready to sleep. She was exhausted. Tool would stand guard for the night. She whispered to Tool, "Fire is life." Tool replied, "Life is fire." With such words was born the first empire, the empire of the IMS, the empire of humanity. You've done well, my child. So I think that was a pretty cool follow up to the last section. Um, when I read the description, this of the what they were seeing, I thought of like, you see like pictures from like space of like I don't know what the hell it's called, like a quasar or a pulsar or something, where it's like a skinny beam of light that's just like going for millions of light years or whatever. Like that's all like, it wasn't like a perfect like the perfectly round beam of light. It was, it's man, I don't even know how to like just put things into words. But just like I can see it in my head and just this like huge fucking thing like going up into the sky that nobody's ever seen. That this Talant Imus, who's been around forever, he's never seen anything like it, and this shouldn't even be possible because he put up this barrier, to keep magic out, but it's happening anyways. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I think the way that you're describing the light is, I guess this is just my take on it, but you know how like sunlight breaks through the clouds and it's not always just a concentrated beam, it's like little separate beams, but just that but reversed. You know what I mean?
Like
I
I
like
keep seeing like a raging
like column of fire.
yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
like like a volcano potentially, like the way that they're depicted in movies where it's just this like vomit of light into the sky, like projectile vomit.
But like one one thing of it though,
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
like a flashlight beam that's going crazy. I don't know.
Like shit coming out of a septic tank.
Yeah, yeah. Way to tie that in.
I do what I can. Yeah. Also an hour long. It lasts an hour. Like just blazing into the night sky just for a fucking hour.
It's a pretty long time.
It is a long time, but I'm confident that this is definitely the event that happened with Tattersail and Bullard and
Yeah, there's no
um,
doubt.
yeah. I know that there's some things later on in the chapter that I believe can probably maybe be a little misconstrued with this event, but we could talk about that when that comes. but also the whole tool revealing so many more elder warrens than the one that we know. And what I'm curious about and what I'm interpreting the Starvald Demolane and how Tool says that there once was one who like could channel this Warren, but their worshippers are none. So does that make that Warren or that elder blood, does that make it like unusable? Is it like, what am I trying to say here?
I feel like it must have been like an elder god, was the one who could use it, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't know what else makes sense.
Is it one of those things where like the gods feed off of worshippers? I and I could be way off, but isn't it the pagan religion where there's like in order for the gods to survive, there has to be some type of following for that god?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Okay. I
Let's
feel like
just
I
let's
saw it in
just sacrifice some people, cut them open, and rip their hearts out. Let's just do that.
right. Okay, sounds good. But I just thought that was cool. Like, is this Warren no longer accessible because there are no longer followers, or like, what is he really trying to say here?
I don't know on that. I also thought it was kind of interesting, like, they're watching this thing flare and, rage into the sky for an hour, and then it's done, and Lauren's just like, okay, fuck it. I'm going to bed. Like, not any more questions about it?
Yeah, yeah, and how that ties into how she, makes a comment to Tool about fire is life, but then he kind of wittingly comes back and says life is fire. With such words was born the first empire. So I guess I go back to creation, where the Talani mass, or were people born of some type of fire or fire god, or were they baked in an oven? I mean, I guess.
I mean, it seems like a religious thing to me, like a religious saying, like, you'd hear in a church. That's just like their thing.
I can see that. I'm thinking I'm gonna go with that because that sounds way closer than what I've got.
That's why there's two of us, man. We have different ideas and thoughts, and we can describe things differently for each other, right?
Exactly, exactly. What did I don't know about you, but I was really confused about the Empire of Humanity. You've done well, my child. Why would Tool compliment her in that way after talking about the fire is life, life is fire kind of conversation they have?
The only thing I could think is that maybe that's something not many people like know. Um, Maybe that's like an IMS thing.
That makes sense.
So maybe she
Like,
knows more like history and stuff than like the average person.
yeah, yeah, like she's like he's complimenting her
Knowledge.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. I'll get on board with that too. I like
Cool.
it. So, I guess those were only my thoughts on that very short section. What about you?
I think we're good to move on.
Cool. Well, before I move on, you remember how in last episode we were all like, I wonder if we're ever going to get like a perspective of Caladan Brood. Yeah. And here we go. So here is the fourth section of this chapter. A pall of smoke hung over Black Dog Forest, a dozen leagues north of Crone. She makes her way towards the encampment on the Rivi Plain. Locating the tent in the center, she observes magic emanating from it. Noticing the color of this magic, she identifies it as the Deris Warren. earth magic. With no guard barring the entrance to the tent, she hops in. There is not much to see in the tent, but at its center is a table with a scale replica of the surrounding lands. A man stands at the table with a mammoth of a hammer strapped to his back. This hammer looks tiny in comparison to the muscles of the man standing there. Hopping up onto the table like an asshole, she quips about delays and then asks none other than the Caladan brood if he had sensed the sorcery from last night. He responds to this by saying that he didn't need to sense it, as it was seen from his position, and that they could speak of this later as he needs to think. Asking a completely different question, she tells Brood that the west flank of the Barghast are in total disarray and asks who commands them. Shaking his head in disbelief, he tells Crone that the commander was Jorik Sharplance. Crone, like an asshole, takes a crack at Jorik, saying that he's pretty full of himself. Brood seems slightly annoyed and continues on and explains how the gold Morath suddenly dropped in from nowhere 3 days ago, and that Jorik, in the cover of night, had retreated. Separating 2/3 of his east and west, and then says something about the Barghast disappearing when no cover seems possible. The Barghast army did an about face and moved against the Morath in a pincer-like movement. Crone is full of questions and asks about the East and Fox's Pass. Brood explains that there are mostly Stannis conscripts occupying the other side. He tells Crone that the Crimson Guard, led by Prince Kaaz, will meddle when the Malazan Marines disembark from the city of Nist. Crone is confused by this and asks Brood why Prince Kaaz doesn't liberate the once free cities to the north. Brood explains that he and Kaaz agree on this, and that their business is their business. Crone squawks under her breath, "Suspicious bastard." She hops towards the south side of the map and ends up knocking over some wooden markers that represent Brood's soldiers and asks about the south side of his army, bringing the conversation back to the events of the fire pillar in the sky. Explaining that he's held council with Prince Kaaz and his mages, as well as the Rivi shamans, and explains to Crone that what happened last night was from something else and it was alone. But Brood suspects more is happening in the south. Crone pipes in again with what Brood suspects as speculation, as Crone explains that Anomander Rake is involved, planning and counter-planning. Brood directly states that he's had enough gossip and asks Crone if she has any news for him. Crone begins to tell Brood that she knows who holds the spinning coin. Brood asks who. Crone, in her annoying bullshit, gives everything but a direct answer. Going on at length about Opon and their game, Brood asks if Rake knows. Crone says that he knows little, but explains that Brood is aware of Rake's dislike for Opon and would do anything to cut those threads given the opportunity. Brood calls Rake an idiot. Brood makes the connection that without Opon, Rake's power is presently unmatched. Brood continues on by saying that Rake is hovering over Jerujistan, and for sure the Empress will send somebody to do something about that. Crone pipes in at this point and says that Jerujistan would be leveled. Brood takes a crack at Rake, saying that Rake's disdain for everything beneath him has left us flat on our faces too many times. With excitement, Crone explains to Brood that if Rake gets his hands on the coin and kills Opon with his sword, the ripple would cause chaos among the gods. Brood tells Crone to shut the fuck up and tells her that the coin bearer must be protected now that Rake has recalled his mages. Crone asks who can match the Tistiandi, and surely Brood wouldn't abandon his campaign here. Brood smiles as his filed sharp teeth show, and tells Crone that he's caught her in her game. Crone was able to recover uh, to this by telling Brood that she respects his anger and that if she is to be a faithful servant, there cannot be any secrets. Brood simply asks Crone what she knows of the Crimson Guard. Crone says she doesn't know shit about them. Brood, after hearing this response, tells Crone to ask the Tisti Andi about their assessment of the Crimson Guard and calls her Crow in the process. Crone takes big offense to this and says that she is leaving. Brood tells her to be gone then. Crone then leaves the tent and departs. Stepping outside the tent, Brood makes sure that Crone has indeed left. He then calls for a man named Calor. Calor steps from around the tent and explains to Brood about the gold Moranth being bogged down in the forest. Acknowledging this, Brood tells Calor that he is heading to Fox Pass to meet with Prince Kaaz. Calling the Brood's horse, Calor asks Brood why he needs to speak with Kaaz. Brood simply says that he needs the Crimson Guard's sixth blade. Brood mounts his horse, and Calor immediately catches on and asks Brood if it's a rake again, continuing to tell Brood that he is simply dismissing Calor's advice. Brood, during mid-conversation, has already started riding to leave. There was a lot of information in this section.
Yes. Yes, there was. That was a pretty long one.
I'll get better at shortening them, I promise.
I don't think you need to worry about that at all.
Okay, well, good. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing then.
Keep on keeping on, man.
But yeah, I had a lot of notes for this section. I don't know about you, but I feel like there's definitely some new shit that's being introduced. And I feel like I've got a little bit of a grasp on it, but at the same time I feel like I'm not quite getting it either.
Yeah, I guess I'll admit, I mean, it's been 2 weeks since we've read this section. Maybe you've read it more recently than that, but I have not. I don't remember much from this, but just listening to your summary, instantly I thought of, okay, we got Caladan Brood, this big hulking guy, and he's got a giant fucking hammer. And then we got Animander Rake, who is 8 feet tall and has a 7-foot sword or whatever. He's huge too. And then this guy, Brood, has got filed teeth like a freaking dinosaur. Like, doesn't sound like he needs a hammer to fight. He can just rip people's flesh off.
Right. Yeah. When I read the filed teeth part, I immediately went to Bruce from Finding Nemo, the shark.
That's funny.
Yeah. Granted, the shark in that movie is a little bit more friendly than I would imagine Brood would be.
They're not food, they're friends.
Fish are not food. Um, the summary, it doesn't really, I guess, do it justice because I would imagine that this conversation between Crone and Brood is really short, but Brood makes the comment that, or essentially tells Crone that yeah, we saw it, but the Rivi shaman also saw it, and they don't really know what to make of it. So
Everybody saw it.
Right, everybody saw it. Lauren saw it. Tool saw it. Brood saw it, but I thought it was funny the diligence, and you don't really get the sense until like you really start to think about it. But later on, he consults, um, other sorcerer, other people who understand magic from different entities that he's got at his disposal. But he essentially is just like double checking to make sure that he doesn't have to worry about it, which gives me the sense that like this character, which we're just now kind of meeting on a more personal level, is pretty strategic. So that also makes me go back to Dujek and Lorne talking about replanning things. So I believe that when Brood is explaining to Crone about the gold Molranth just suddenly being dropped in on the Barghast unit that is part of his, I guess, regiment, um, was the result of Dujek's replanning. And also tied into Lorne being attacked by Barghast. Because the Barghast are not on the Empire's side.
And you don't want to be on the other side of their lances.
Right. As Talk said so beautifully, fucking lances.
It's a perfect 2 words.
Also, I don't know, the one I thought was cool about the Barghast, now that we're talking about him. And I do know that there is a Barghast bridge burner, but it kind of seems like he's against the grain compared to, I guess, the rest of his race or culture, um, being that he is a bridge burner. But it it took me a couple of reads, but Brood explains that the Barghast having the ability to disappear when no cover seems possible, as he's explaining to Crone, Jorik's retreat away from the Gold Morath, how for some reason the Barghast were able to just disappear with no cover, thus allowing the Barghast to move against the Morath in that like pincer like battle tactic. So like that just makes me think, do the Barghast have some type of like cloaking or camouflage ability? It's kind of where like my thought went there.
Or maybe they're like the Aiel. They just blend in.
You just blend into the surroundings. Well, I know that like they occupy like some type of mountain range. So maybe they wear different type of clothing depending on their environment. I don't know. It could very well be like the ideal too.
In yeah, broad sense, I guess, uh, description.
Yeah. And I know that like we've had a couple of sections where battle plans essentially are being talked about, and sometimes I feel like it's hard to like make straight of what's happening, but I do remember that the Stannis conscripts are, I know Dujek makes the comment that their loyalty is like wish-washy, and Brood also kind of recognizes this as well. So he makes the comment that the conscripts, their alliance is fading with the Malazan Empire. So like I feel like he'll be able to use that to his advantage.
Well, I mean, if you're a conscript, I mean, you were voluntold, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, your loyalty may not be very high to begin with.
So okay, so I know what a conscript is, but what is a Stannis conscript?
That I don't know.
Okay. I mean, is that like a, I'm wondering if that's like the land that they're occupying. Like, is that what is on the other side of Fox Path? I mean, I looked at the map again and I couldn't find anything that said Stannis. So that's just what I immediately went to, but I'm probably way wrong.
Yeah, I don't know what a status conscript is. No idea there. So your guess is probably as good as mine. Whatever you think, I will go with because I don't have a damn thing to add to it.
Sounds good to me. But speaking of battle plans and Dujik, um, Brood does suspect that more is happening in the south. And it sounds to me like Dujek may be fruitful in his repurposing of the Malazan army's assets, because it seems that Brood and Kaaz want to remain on the wrong side of Fox Paz, as Dujek so notably planned. And that's what I think Brood was not going to reveal to Crone when he's like, "Oh, well, it's my business. It's our business, so fuck you." You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're right.
Yeah. But I think it's cool how like, Steven Erickson makes these associations without like directly saying it. And I know that that might frustrate some people, but I find it really clever and I enjoy connecting those.
Yeah, you got to work for it a little bit.
Right, right. Thankfully, it's not on a pole with a bunch of ones, but
Hey, we could make that happen. And for you, it would
uh,
probably be $10 bills, not ones.
yeah, but only one $10 bill. Everyone else is gonna run and flee.
Hey, but you got that one person to do the work, nine other people. So
True, true. Well, speaking of spinning strippers, did you catch the spinning coin reference in here?
it was not the first time we've heard that the coin bearer needs to be protected, is it?
Not at all. But do you find that interesting?
That like somebody completely different said it?
Well, right, but we're also Caladan Brood we're just being introduced to, and as soon as he's told about the spinning coin, his immediate reaction is to protect them. So again, that tells me like what whose side is this guy on? Because I mean, he calls Rake a little bit of an he calls him an idiot, but I was always under the assumption, and maybe you were too, that Brood and Rake were allies.
Yes,
But
yeah, I was, but I mean, I suppose it doesn't mean that you can't think he's fucking dumb.
true, I guess I just get the feeling that, again, I guess back to the whole playing two sides. I feel like Brood is also in the situation where like he may be playing a double game of some time of some, or potentially he's trying to take over Moonspawn.
That is an interesting thought.
And going back to the spinning coin, I found myself thinking quite a lot for the longest time about how Crone knew about the spinning coin because she wasn't there. She didn't observe any of this information. So how does she know about the coin?
Well, she's a magic giant bird.
Right. 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 I just I was more just looking for your input, but Crone is she's I mean these great ravens, right? They're essentially bloodhounds for magic. And something as big as Opon interfering is bound to get the attention of somebody. And because Crone is a master spy, and because she was headed for Jerujistan that night, that has to be the only likely reason as to how she knows. I
I
just,
think
again, it was beautiful.
that's a pretty good analogy. I think the bloodhound. Yeah, just sniff it out.
And even, just something as big as Opon interfering, like that had to have taken a lot of magic, right? So that would be the difference between, you know, somebody getting cut half in the water, and here's another shark reference, and you've got a million sharks in the area surrounding, or you just prick your little finger and you've got like a shark or two, you know? So
Right.
the level of attention is much bigger.
Just not remembering a whole lot from this particular part of the chapter, and since I didn't remember it, I don't have a whole lot to contribute there for you.
No worries. Yeah, I've got a few more actually. But you
Let her
remember
rip.
let her rip tater chip. Just kidding. You remember at the end of, well, not the end of, but somewhere in the last episode, we were talking about Crone and how she might have a couple of masters. Well,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it was at the end of the chapter. Um, but we know that she has multiple masters, and I can only assume that Brood is aware of this. Like, it kind of seems like he doesn't quite trust her.
Oh yeah, like he's one of them, but yeah, he knows that there's others. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it just kind of tells me that Brood may be using Crone as some type of pawn, which is kind of a reoccurring theme in this book. But I don't think that Rake is on to it. I don't. I have a sneaky suspicion that Rake doesn't know.
He just seems kind of distant from everything. I don't know how you feel on that, but he just kind of seems detached.
Yeah, yeah. Like he's got a little bit of his own agenda, which I'll get to in just a little bit. But um, the whole Brood asking Crone about what she knows about the Crimson Guard. And, again, she doesn't know shit about the Crimson Guard, but Brood essentially kind of says to ask or to have Crone ask the Tistiandi, which are essentially, I can assume, the mages of Moonspawn, about their assessment of the Crimson Guard. And so, is there something within the Crimson Guard that has the ability to take on Rake's Tisti Andi, which are essentially their mages? So, but I always just thought the Crimson Guard was just any type of mercenaries.
Yeah, I don't know if they're like an elite unit or just mercenaries or maybe both.
Right. Which, you know, in after Crone leaves, this gentleman Caller, which I understand is a little bit older, seems to have given Brood multiple warnings about not taking on Anomander Rake. But as we know, he is essentially leaving to go meet up with Prince Kaaz to gather what is the Crimson Guard's sixth blade. So I don't know if that's like a special part of the Crimson Guard or what that is, but I definitely think that Brood has been planning something and now he's executing it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was like, is that just one person or is it a unit? I wasn't sure. Excuse me, how to take that.
Yeah. So I definitely think that there's some conspiracy happening with Brood and Rake and the Crimson Guard and the Tistiandi. So I'm curious as to see how that unfolds. But those were essentially the things that I had, I guess, documented of interest.
Yeah, there was a lot to that part. I mean, every chapter we've read, I think we've had a lot of stuff come up and happen. So there's a lot to dissect.
Absolutely. It's fun though.
Yeah, I'm having a good time.
Me too. But I guess with that being said, you wanna read your section?
Like SpongeBob SquarePants would say, I'm ready. Never really watched that show, but
Such a
anyways,
dork. Backing up. Mrs. Puff! Backing up!
I always hated that show, if I'm honest. Thought it was stupid. All right. Tok and Pran reached the area where the column of fire was the previous night. As Tok had said they would, they made it out of the city with no problem on the Wiccan horses. The air smelled like sulfur and ash, covered Tok and Pran and their horses. Both Pran and Tok had some fear of what they saw. Neither had ever seen anything like it. They camped a league away from it and could still feel the heat. As they approached, the fear really set in. Perhaps 100 yards away, they could see what looked like a disfigured tree stump. An area roughly 5 yards around the tree in a perfect circle was untouched, which is pretty odd. So I guess we know about how big that beam of light or fire, was about 5 yards around. The closer they got, the less it looked like a tree. Finally, he realized it was Tattersail, and Paran collapsed to his knees. As he looked up, he realized the other figure was or is Bellerdan. Tok called out that he saw tracks leading away, but they looked odd, like a child's, but if the soles of the feet were burned away, and the feet were mostly bones. Bran says that Bellerden came out here to bury Nightchill. Tok says it doesn't look like she needs burying anymore. Bran says Lorne is responsible for this, and she has a lot coming to her. Tok says that's fine, but they need to be smart about it. As they ride off, Tok wonders if he made a mistake going with Paran. So, kind of a quick first-hand, somebody up close to what everybody else had seen, and it's, I mean, pretty gruesome.
It is pretty gruesome.
Didn't describe it
Like,
a lot, but I mean, you got
yeah.
like two people basically melted together.
Well, we call it what, a disfigured tree.
Yeah,
It is pretty messed up. But I think this is the section where I think I really started to feel that like Tattersail was not dead. But also I know that in some of the conversations that we had after this, is this a part where you thought that there was like a second puppet running
yeah,
around?
yes, yeah. I definitely did because, but yeah, I thought there was a second puppet. I had a feeling that like from reading this that Tattersail and Bellerden were like combined, into
Yeah,
one, and like turned into a puppet. Like I can't even remember her name now.
Tattersail,
No,
Lauren,
Hairlock.
Hairlock.
Yeah, I don't know. But I wasn't really sure exactly what had happened. But that was my feeling reading it.
And I mean, there's so many things that would make you think that though. I totally could see how you would think that. But what are your thoughts now that you've had a minute to, I guess, dissect it more?
I still kind of, I mean, I don't know. I still kind of feel that way.
Okay.
I didn't, to me, it didn't make sense why Hairlock would come out of this. You had all this thing going on with Tattersail and Bellerden. And to me, it just makes, from what we've seen, I don't know where Hairlock would have came from. Why he would have ran away from there and not Tattersail and Bellerden as whatever they become.
I gotcha. I can see that. Um, and we'll get to Hairlock in a minute, but I think based on some of the things that we've read previously, um, or we've summarized previously, particularly with Bellerden and Tattersail's confrontation that caused this massive eruption, and kind of what I would allude to in the next section, kind of being similar incidences, but not necessarily the same. I think that the fact that Tattersail recognizes the the sack that is holding Nightshill's body, the magic of preservation that she had put on it, and then the thought of Hairlock's like soul shift into asshole puppet. I think that what happened is, being that we have heard so much about Tattersail having the ability to be a high mage, that she, in her act, her plan, her in the moment plan, is she essentially soul shifted into Night Chill's body. And that is what I think is the souls of what was described like a child's, but that of mostly bones. So those two things kind of like tied those events for me. So I think that it is literally just Night Chill's body that has been reanimated by Tattersail's soul. Now she is no longer soft pillows, but no pillows.
I think you're right about the night chill thing. You know, they hinted at um, becoming like one that makes sense to me.
Yeah. But I also, again, when I first read this chapter and the next section, there's definitely some things that events that are similar that would make one think that they're the same event, if that makes sense. And that might be a good segue into the next section. And we can kind of come back and talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's there we kind of saw a lot in this section, but there's definitely some things to talk about, but there's not like a lot of different events, not a lot of conversation, just kind of, it's showing us.
Right. What happened, the aftermath. 2 days have passed since Crone had met with Brood, and with the setting sun to the west, she flies over the Rivi plain. It appears to be barren and empty of life. Crone's, Crone's senses were limited, but in such darkness was it best for her to detect sorcery. Hoping she would run into fellow ravens from Moonspawn, as they were regularly sent out on Rake's orders to survey the plain. It was only a matter of time before she would run into one, and when she did, she would ask them if they'd sense any sorcery. Just then, a flare of blue and green sorcery was seen just a league ahead of her. It felt unfamiliar to her. She hears a cry, and then a ball of sorcery hits a raven near her. With that small amount of light hitting her fellow raven, she was able to see that there were more about. Telling them that their mother is here, the rest of the ravens vanguard around Crone. Crone asks for the raven named Huddle. Huddle happens to be right next to her, and Crone asks for an update. Huddle explains that him and a raven named Kinclip had detected sorcery and went in to investigate. Huddle tells Crone that what he saw, and that was a puppet emerging from a warren that was unfamiliar. When the puppet detected Kinclip, he gestured at her and she was incinerated. And since then, he has disappeared into his warren. Crone tells her flock of ravens to return back to Moonspawn, and then Crone kind of sits tight for a second and waits to make sure her children have left. Moving in, she spots the puppet emerging from its warren, weaving as it runs. Enveloping herself with a protective magic, she swoops in. The puppet gestures to her, and she is enveloped in the magic. She falls, but is able to regain herself, and she plummets high into the sky. She was able to detect the magic used on her was Elder, and that of Chaos Warren. She asks herself who would play with Chaos. She immediately thinks of Rake, and ignores her instructions from Brood to keep Rake in the dark on most things. Rake was good for more than Brood would give him credit for, and that was death and destruction. Cackling at this, she picks up speed. She failed to notice the dead smudge of land below her with a woman camped in the middle. Yeah, I think that another part of like Huddle's explanation to Crone is that Huddle had observed the puppet, which immediately reminded him of soul shifting. And after this, Crone kind of thinks a little bit about this interaction. kind of just before, like after the ravens have left, but before she runs into the puppet, she explains to like us, the reader, that soul shifting was once more prominent back then, and perhaps it's someone who has survived this long, but she thinks that this is unlikely. I think that going back to Hairlock's determination to conquer the Chaos Warren has been fulfilled. I feel like he was able to master the Chaos Warren, or or going back to Hairlock's threat to Quick Ben about, if there's a god inside of this Chaos Warren, that he's likely being manipulated by this god, and just so happens to have bestowed Hairlock with the ability to use the Chaos Warren.
I don't think I've got anything to add to that.
Because Crone makes the statement that the Chaos Warren is the eldest, but that also kind of contradicts the Starvalid,
Yeah.
who explains. So I guess at this point, I mean, Crone is old as fuck. Tool is probably older. So maybe this is like the Starvalid is something that Crone is completely unaware of. But yeah, I think that, it's 2 days past Crone's meeting with Brood, which would make it 3 days or 3 nights rather since Tattersail and Bellerden have their, you know, vomit fire confrontation. So I think that these events are, they sound similar, but I think that they're two separate events. I think that Hairlock has conquered Chaos Warren, and because he's mad as fuck, and he's going to Jerujistan because we know that's where he was headed.
Yeah. To me, I mean, like they got to be separate. I just it doesn't make any sense to me how Tattersail and Bellerden, I guess more or less become one, and Hairlock comes out of that somehow, and not those two or one, you know.
Yeah, and I mean you're onto something because it's not out of the realm of possibility because Hairlock has an extreme disdain for Tattersail and vice versa. Like they don't like each other. And you add in the fact that Hairlock we know is he's going crazy. He's mad with whatever power or determination or whatever it is that Quick Ben is having a hard time wrangling in. So I almost kind of wonder, is like the intention of this chapter to maybe like disorient the reader a little bit about these events, because I feel like just on a very quick read through, like that's exactly what, like if you're just reading through it and not reading it again, or something you may pick up on a second read through, but we have the advantage of the fact that we're reading it multiple times so that we can summarize it. I think that
Right.
this very well could have been like an intentional.
A curveball.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Curveball.
I thought it was kind of cool, like the ravens flying and just like,
Just like the visual you get, like it's complete darkness. Corona has no idea, and then like flash of lights. You know, kind of like in movies where like thunder rumbles, and you can see like people or something in the clouds, right?
I get. Did you ever watch Band of Brothers?
I never saw it. No.
Oh man. Uh, so Band Brothers World War II thing, but there's an episode where they're showing like the paratroopers jumping behind enemy lines in Germany, and they're just the flat cannons are going up at them, and they're getting shot down all over the place. That's what I get the kind of the picture of is like the airplanes are the Ravens, and then just the flat cannons, and like maybe it's kind of sick, I guess, that I'm thinking this way, that the Ravens are like the airplanes getting shot up from World War II, I guess. But like that's kind of what I pictured, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can visualize that. I see where you're going. Makes sense to me.
If you get a chance, check it out. It's really good.
Well, I know, it's in the vein of Saving Private Ryan, right?
Um, yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
I mean, I really enjoyed that movie, so
you would.
I've always
I mean,
been
I don't think I've heard anybody say anything bad about Band of Brothers.
sweet. I'll have to check that out. I'll put it on my list of things to watch.
It is a good one.
But yeah, I mean, after after reading this section, I'm a little bit afraid of Hairlock because I mean
He's a crazy motherfucker.
he's a crazy motherfucker. He's a puppet, a soul shifted puppet, and now he's conquered the ability. Well, maybe not conquered, but you know, last time we had met with him and Quick Ben, right? Like he hadn't quite figured it out yet, but clearly he has because Crone is able to, after I guess Raven research, was able to deduce that it was, that of the Chaos Warren. So he had to have tapped into it in some way, and it kind of makes me nervous a little bit as to like where he's gonna go with this power.
Yeah, you don't really know. I mean, what's he gonna? We could do probably a lot of things. I don't know what it would, what he'd become capable of doing, but probably not much good.
Right. Like he's up to some shit. And whether Tool is right or whether Crone is right about it being quote unquote the eldest of the Warrens, I mean it's definitely pretty ancient. So like what's around now that can combat that, you know?
Um, yeah, probably not much.
And does this mean that Quick Ben no longer has a hold on Hairlock? Just as I'm thinking about this situation.
Possibly.
So yeah, I guess we'll just have to read and find out.
Oh, we ready to move on here to the last part?
I'm ready if you are.
All right. Lauren is by her bedroll and asks Tool if what they saw 2 nights ago was connected. Tool doesn't think so, but he's concerned that the sorcery ignored his barrier, and that must mean it is an elderling, and whoever its master is, they should assume is tracking them. Lauren asks if it is Shadow Thrones. Tool says no, so Lauren says it's not tracking them. Cool, you just made that assumption, I guess. Tool reminds her this hunter can penetrate his magic and defenses and could sneak up on them from behind. Lauren is not afraid of magic and wants to sleep. I guess probably because of her sword. Tool says they witnessed the elder magic choosing its targets. Ravens. Ravens don't fly at night. Lauren asks if he thinks it's odd that a supposedly empty plane is showing so much activity. He says power ever draws other power, an idea that somehow escaped them. Lauren asks Tool what he thinks about. Tool replies he thinks of futility. She asks if all IMS think about futility. Tool says no, few actually think at all. Lauren again asks why, and he replies that it's futile. She says they need to get going and wonders what Tool had meant by everything he said. Kind of an interesting conversation, especially at the end there. Just kind of
Yeah,
talking in a circle, I guess.
right. Like thinking is futile, but he's thinking about futility. Like I don't know. It goes back to my theory that Tool's a little dumpy. There's probably some wisdom there that we just don't know yet. But
Right, and I think he's right to be concerned about whatever this is. It can penetrate his magic. You know, I don't know. That's something I would think that's something to be worried about. Whether you have a sword that can neutralize magic or not, you might want to be aware of that.
right. And his efforts might be futile to thwart it.
Nicely done. That was good.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Isn't maybe I'm just imagining things, but I could have swore that he held a sword over her throat in this section. Like, doesn't she wake up with like him pointing a sword at her? I guess it's been a minute, but I could have swore that that had happened in this section. Like she wakes up and he's like hovering over her.
Um, I don't remember offhand, but obviously, if that was the case, I kind of skipped over that.
But I could have swore that was in this section. I feel like it is like right before Lorne asks him about what he thinks about.
I don't think so.
Okay. I must be crazy. But
Crazy like a fox.
crazy like a it's the yeah. It was a futile comment.
Ah,
But yeah, I think it's interesting that Tool is under the assumption that the Ravens don't fly at night, but clearly we know they do. So I mean, I guess
or
while
something drove them to fly that particular night.
I
And
mean,
maybe
right. Yeah.
Crone might be the oddball that does other times too, I suppose. But
But yeah, they were out on the plane surveying. Oh yeah, I suppose that could have happened before night fell. So I mean, I guess that's in the realm of possibility. But yeah, I just it's weird to think of Tool because like I feel like he's kind of dumpy and like a little like slow, maybe, but also like super wise and knowledgeable. Like, is it weird to have such contrasting ideas of a character?
no, because I agree. Again, like he trying to think of who he reminds me of, but yeah, maybe there's nobody else to compare him to, but he is
Maybe.
wise. But yeah, I know what you mean. He does seem a little slow sometimes.
Yeah. What's with Lauren sleeping? Like, why is she like? I feel like she's a bit tired in this chapter, and all they're doing is traveling, which I get can be a little weary, but like, why is she so concerned about getting sleep?
It's a good point. I didn't even notice that they mentioned that a couple times, so maybe there's something
Yeah,
there.
like something is draining her power, or like I mean, I feel like kind of similar to Crone and how she's like able to detect magic. I think that for Lorne to be like an anti-mage, she either has to possess like sorceress abilities, or she could just maybe has a talent for detecting magic. Because like there's got to be some reason why she's in this position. The adjunct of the Empress. So, or maybe
Right.
like
Yeah, I don't think you just happenstance into that.
right, or maybe like the Ota Terrell sword draws on her a little bit, or something, something that Lauren can do that like makes it work, or yeah, I don't know.
That could be. Yeah, there's like a I don't know maybe if it downside's the right word, but the sword might have some sort of effect on her.
Yeah, some type of like peripheral effect. Yeah, I guess not a lot to talk about this section, but I feel like the big takeaways are Caladan Brood and his maybe plans or what he's got in store for Rake and that confrontation potentially. Hairlock and Tattersail, I guess, potentially inhabiting Night Chill's body and Crone and her annoying antics and her attack. So yeah, lots and Bellerden, right? Like, is he dead? Like, they don't make any mention of him after that. So is he? I mean, I would assume he's dead. So
Or is he going to have some sort of consciousness within, whatever we find out here?
yeah, or maybe he's just stuck in a tree shape. Like maybe he's still conscious in there. Maybe he's just like frozen in time or something.
And like, fuck, I'm a tree. This
I'm a
sucks.
disfigured tree. Night Chill.
Burn me down.
But yeah, I would say we did this chapter justice. What do you say?
I hope so.
I think we did. I think we crushed.
We gave it a damn good shot.
That's what we did. It wasn't futile at all.
No, it was not. I don't think that for a second.
Good. But yeah, we can be found on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and Spotify.
Yes, and then as far as the socials, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search D&J's Epic Quest. Twitter's by far the most active. Don't seem to get much interaction on Facebook. Looks like there's a little bit on Instagram. I tried messing with that, but not really my thing. But Twitter, we're up to 75 followers now. So we're growing. Appreciate everybody following along and having a good time with us. But it would be cool to, maybe see a review. I'm not pleading for a 5-star review or anything like that, but just some feedback on the podcast side of things. I know I listen to some other podcasts, and I know they say that rating and reviewing helps get things out to others, so makes it more discoverable. So if anybody wants to do that, whatever you feel is a fair rating, and just leave us an honest review. We'd love to read it.
Yes, we would. Yes. All right, man. Well, I guess till next time.
Talk to you later, bud.
Later, man.